Hi there, I'm Diane Evans at PhotoFluent. Welcome to our weekly live show. It sounds fancy, doesn't it, when I say show? Every time I say that, I think, not the Today Show or Good Morning America, but who knows? Who knows we'll start watching and what will become here at PhotoFluent. So welcome. I'm very happy that you're here. I hope you're having a lovely spring because I think by now, everybody is in spring, right? No more snow? Well, I guess unless you're in Colorado. I lived in Colorado for 10 years and I love Colorado. Shout out to anyone there. But I didn't like the spring snow. April is their biggest month of snow. I didn't like it, which is why I'm in California now. But pretty much everybody has some spring flowers, sunshine, warmth, and that's nice, isn't it? Okay, what is our topic this week? What is it? Well, why creating great photos is more than just your camera. I hope if you've been around PhotoFluent, known me for a while, that you know it's more than camera settings, technology. I think sometimes it can seem complicated, photography. So that's what I wanted to dive into today. What goes into making great photos? And are they equally important? Can you do one without the other? Let's get started, shall we? All right, so let's start with the premise here that photography is art. And sometimes I think we lose sight of that because everybody and their brother now has a camera, i.e. phone. In the old days, you had to actually purchase a camera, you had to develop film, you had to, so you could take photos of your vacation and anybody could do it, but it took a little more effort. Now, everybody, little kids are snapping away. But that doesn't necessarily mean the snapshots everybody's taking is art. The other question I have is, does that make everybody with a camera a photographer? I don't think so. I think a photographer is someone, now I've read definitions that you have to actually make a living with your photography to be a photographer. I don't take that school of thought. I think if you're here, if you want to make better photos, if it's important to you, if you see photography as an art and not just a way of snapping whatever you lay eyes on, then I think you are a photographer. So we're going to just say, for argument's sake, photography is an art, and you are a photographer. Now, if you're here and we've established you are a photographer, photography is an art, what you also probably know is it's kind of a complicated art form. I'm not saying it's simple, but it's not like picking up a pencil and sketching. I can't do sketching, so let's just say it's not easy, but it doesn't have as many components to it as far as the layers of complication. Now, like I said, can't pick up a pencil and draw anything, so there's a lot of learning to it. But with photography, you have equipment and gear and camera settings, the technology of it all, digital files. What do you do with those? Do you edit them? How do you store them? How do you organize them? And just your camera settings alone can be complicated. Aperture, shutter speed, ISO, exposure, focus, how do they work together? That alone can make some say, I can't do this, and put their camera down. I did that. I put my camera down because I thought, you know what, I just can't figure this out. So I decided the DSLR was too much for me, I'll just get a point and shoot. But what I found was, I still wanted to take a little more complicated of a picture than I could get with a point and shoot. So I thought, I'm committed to this art form. I love it. It's inside there somewhere, and I have to figure it out. So I did. But is camera settings, as one of the components, the most important thing? Can you be a photographer without figuring them out? Well, I think it is still important, but I do think that there are some workarounds, right? You don't have to be an engineer of cameras and be an expert in camera settings to take good photos. Some photos, like this one, there's composition involved, but camera settings wasn't the most crucial factor here. So yeah, you can take some good photos without completely understanding your camera settings. Now it helps though, because when you start to take normal photos that don't require a lot of camera setting knowledge, eventually you're going to say, okay, I'm ready for something more creative, something like this with some motion blur. Then you have to kind of get how shutter speed works. So at some point you're going to want to understand it, but do you have to be shooting in manual mode to take good photos and understand it to the point that you're an expert? No, you don't. But it is something you'll want to learn. Now, let's move on to composition. This one is my favorite. And I think it is the most important, because until you get to the point where all the camera settings really, really make sense, composition is your best friend. It's what makes your photos more interesting. What tells the story? What makes your viewer have a good experience? So the light is low, so that gets sticky with the camera settings. But what's the most striking thing about this? It's the silhouette of the man. It's that kind of lighthouse feature, and it's a bridge over the top. Like, it makes you think, where is this? And the elements are very striking because they're silhouettes and there's some light coming through. So there's a little warmth sparkling through, but it's really the composition that makes this photo unique. And this one is also about composition because of the perspective. Like, I'm kind of behind the tower. You can see the element, the old brick, that old ancient structure. You can see the walkway in front of it, and then in the background, the village. So it has layers to it. It's an interesting composition. However, it's also in the middle of the day, right? So camera settings, not quite as crucial. I did use a shallow depth of field to emphasize that brick tower in the front. So that helps add to the total picture. But I would say the most important element here, again, is composition. All right, now the third thing we're going to talk about is trusting in your creativity. Because no matter how good you get with camera settings, no matter how you understand composition, the rule of thirds, leading lines, all the rules, until you just let yourself go and trust that you do know how to create something unique and pretty, and we all do, your photos are going to start to look boring. You're going to get in a rut. I can get in a rut. Everybody can get in a rut. It's human nature. You do what's comfortable. You keep doing what's comfortable over and over. So although this one isn't as concrete as, say, aperture or even composition, it's really important for you to take your photography to a different level. What I mean by trusting in your creativity is to just try some new things. Just think, this seems weird, or I don't know what I'm doing here, and do it anyway. Like, this is a fountain in Bordeaux. It was right in the middle of the day, and I thought, there's no way with that bright sun hanging in the sky that I'm going to get anything here. But I tried some different angles, perspectives, camera settings, and I really like the result. It's kind of ethereal and abstract and cool, I think. And since I'm the photographer, I can think that. My own work, right? I can like it. Now this was in Santa Fe, and I was taking a workshop there. So we were given assignments, and you had to go out during the day and take photos, street portraits, so of people. And as much as I love creating photos of people, especially street portraits, I'm shy about approaching people and talking to them. Which is why I took the workshop, because the whole point was to push me out of my comfort zone. So our assignment every day was to go out in the wild and ask people if we could make their photo. So this was dark lighting, inside. I was kind of nervous because it's somebody I didn't know. I'm not saying it's the best photo I've ever taken, but I have it here to show you that sometimes it takes a little push to get yourself out of your comfort zone and to try new things. So camera settings were important here because it's a dark setting. I did a shallow depth of field because look at all of the stuff that's going on. You have bottles and glasses and him and his hand and the background. I think it's a skeleton back there. It's a mess. So if I would have just taken an automatic photo, it would have been so busy, your eye would have not even known where to start, what to look at. So I would say this one kind of brings all of them in. But I have it under the creativity section because it was pushing me out of my comfort zone. Okay, so we have camera settings and the technology part. We have composition, framing, where do you place the elements, the perspective. Then we have trusting your creativity. Not just being creative, but trusting in your ability to do that. Now, sometimes all the stars align, and all of those pieces just fit together beautifully. This is in Carcassonne, and it's getting towards the end of the day. I didn't have a tripod with me, but I had enough light, and there was a stone wall, so I could sit my camera on, because I had to use a little bit slower shutter speed, right? Since the light was low, it's the end of the day. It was a cloudy day, so the sun's going down and the sky is just gorgeous. Like the clouds are blue. This really is not pumped up in Lightroom. It's adjusted a smidge, but I actually took it down a notch because it looked fake, even though that's really how it looked. Now, we were going to the walled city up there on the hill that you can see. We're walking by on this bridge, and I look at this scene, and I took the photo. So the composition is important, I think, but when you look at the scene, to me, it seems like a pretty obvious composition. Get the bridge, get the walled city, the shutter speed, the aperture, all of that. It just all kind of fit together, and it wasn't too complicated of a photo because it wasn't that tricky of light, and it was a deep depth of field. So, it's a pretty basic photo that just turned out great. Sometimes you get lucky like that. Now this was not due to luck. I had a tripod. I was there for a good hour watching the sun go down. The sky was hideously gray and overcast and just kind of ugly. It was cold. It was windy. I wanted to go eat dinner. But as the sun went down, 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 then this happened. So it wasn't just an easy walking by, oh, look at that shot, snap, you got it. Because that can happen. But again, you want to go to the next level, you got to do a little more planning. You got to know some of the components of camera settings and composition. Try some new things. And so, yes, I actually took multiple exposures of this and combined them because it was getting dark, but there's some bright areas. Yeah, this one took a little more work, but I love it. So it was worth it to me. So here are my thoughts on managing all of this. Because can photography be complicated? Yes, it can. Should we let that hold us back? No, absolutely not. If you love telling your story, creating memories, sharing your memories with others, then you absolutely need to just keep going forward. Don't get too wrapped up in all the technology and details, and don't let it get overwhelming or let fear hold you back. These are thoughts I've had before, and that's why I know that there might be in your head too. I will never figure this out. I'm just not good at this. What's the point? I'll just use my phone. None of that's true. Those are thoughts because you look at your photos and think they're not as good as everybody else's. But they don't have to be as good as a National Geographic photographer. And chances are you're probably being pretty hard on yourself. All of us look back at older photos and think, oof, those could have been a lot better. But next year, your photos will be better. Next month, they'll be better. Next year, then next year, then next year. All of us 10 years later will look back at the photos we're making now and think they're not as good as I make now. So you will get better. It's fun to practice if you let it be fun. Sometimes when we're doing our weekly live show, you hear something in the background that you think, does she have a badger living in her house? And no, I don't. Sometimes I stop and say, that's Maggie. And sometimes I don't. So in case you've heard my shows before and thought, what's that noise? I would like you to meet Maggie. We call her Princess Maggie May. We call her a lot of things. Sweetie Baby Pie. She is our adorable sweet princess. But she doesn't like other dogs so much. She has a best friend, Patrick, who's a Westie, and couldn't be cuter. And they're best friends. She has one friend besides humans, and that's Patrick. Every other dog in the neighborhood, she hates them. She doesn't like it when they walk by the house. And she has learned to not like the mailman. Why? Because she naps during the day, of course, she's a dog. And he comes, and we have a mail slot right in the house that goes through the wall. And he clanks that open, puts the mail in, and it scares her. So she jumps up from her nap and starts howling her little head off. So sometimes that's what happens. It's the mailman at delivery, or a dog just happens to walk by the house. You hear a lot of weird noises. She's not a barker, but she kind of whines and starts running around like a maniac. Not a badger. It's this sweet, precious, fuzzy face that you hear in the background sometimes. And that's her ducky, her favorite. Her best friend besides Patrick, we'll say. All right, I just thought you should know that. Who is that? What is that? That's what it is. All right, so let's just summarize. Photography is an art form that can be very complicated, but it's so worthwhile because when you go on your fabulous trips, and that's going to happen soon-ish, you create memories that you will have with you forever because they're digital or printed. You can print them more than you remember up here, right? These great memories, and you can share them with others. You can inspire others with your photos. So is it worth it to figure all this stuff out? Yes. Do you have the capability to figure it all out? Yes, you do. Well, thank you for joining us this week, and I hope you have a fabulous rest of your week and spring weekend. I'll see you very soon.